Well, Bryce, again, this is Bryce Saxton. He's over at Emerson House. And just in case people haven't had this experience, memory issues, they make the assisted living concept a little bit more involved, a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have, there's more staff involved in our care, a lot more technique and training that we employ, and things that we teach our staff to help, you know, deal with some of the complex issues of dementia care. And people living at home with a loved one with Alzheimer's or dementia, no matter what stage they're in, they're starting to see what some of those struggles would be firsthand, and how difficult it can be, kind of losing who that person was,
Yeah.
and figuring out what's the new normal and how do I interact with this person when the normal logic has kind of gone out the window. And it takes some creativity and a lot of patience. So it's a little different than just saying hi to grandma and grandpa, or your spouse that is in an assisted living. It takes a little more skill and understanding and empathy for this horrible disease and what our residents are going through.
And a bunch more patience.
Yeah, patience, and we go slow, and it's just
Yeah.
happy times. We're in their home. I'm often reminded with our residents, laughter is one of the best medicines. And sometimes I get too serious and I'm trying to get different things done, and I cross paths with them, and they quickly remind me, like, no, life is good. Let's just relax and have a laugh. And, they're a great example of still enjoying life to the fullest, even with their limitations they have.
We lost one of our clients not too long ago, and he was fully aware of his Alzheimer's diagnosis. He was fully aware that this is going to mean things for him. Right now, at the beginning, he could see some of it, and he was aware of that. And he was a little concerned he would see stuff, that was going to happen down the road. And so I just looked at him one time and I said, well, so how do you know you have Alzheimer's?
Yeah.
And he says, it's because I do weird crap.
Yeah. Yeah. And they'll be the first to remind you, like, it's okay, snap out of it. Like you're freaking me out. I'm good here. I'm still living my life.
Yeah. And yeah, from time to time when we saw him, I asked him how he was doing. He goes, I'm still doing weird crap. And I go,
yeah.
Well, there you go. That's awesome. So I think people forget that if you are the one with the diagnosis, you see the world differently than you have in the past, but it's the folks dealing with you that really, now this is a challenge. This is a struggle. This is going to take more effort and energy.
Yeah.
And we forget that.
Yeah. Yeah. Once, like the example you gave, once you move past that self-realization period, I have a grandmother that she's living at home with my mother right now, and she's still in that self-realization period. And, that's a tough point for them. But once you move past that, and they're just living their life the best they can, and it becomes hard for us. And, and we have training we do here on trying to empathize and understand what is, going on, how their brain is being affected, and kind of throwing logic out the window. We're joining their journey and working with what's reality to them and how can we best interact with them. And the big change has to happen in the caregivers and those that are around those with Alzheimer's and dementia. And, hats off to anybody that is in that situation, because it's really a big undertaking that nobody asked to be in that situation. And, you're asked to kind of step up and try to learn as much as you can, and, it's a tough overall situation until you have some good tools that kind of helps you make sense of what you're dealing with and how you can be most successful. So that's, some of the stuff we help our staff with.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack in that, Bryce. Can I take us back and kind of walk through a few of those things? Because you live it, you know it, you've developed a way to look at the world, you've developed some skills and some habits, and the rest of us don't have that.
Yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah,
and
and it's a big learning curve, and you're kind of jumping off a cliff, and you have to learn real quick, and it's scary, and but once you learn, then you start to feel more sense of power and confidence that you can accept this new reality in your life and actually go from being nervous in a tough situation to really helping your loved one have the best journey they can through this disease.
yeah. So let me roll this back a little bit, because what you're talking about is once you feel empowered, you can exercise some leadership, which we need in that situation. We need somebody that can step in and say, well, this is how we can work with dad or grandpa. Here's what you need to remember. And that isn't always there.
Yeah.
But if we roll that back a little bit, I have family that has been through that situation, and the first thing that they noticed was that mom, was forgetting some things, and we have this notion that we're all going to be there. We're going to forget some stuff. Mm-hmm. Tell us what the difference is, though. What are we going to see if we haven't figured this out yet? What is it that we're going to see, and how do we distinguish between, I forgot where my keys are, and with mom, it was put a pan on the stove and turn on the stove and then walk off.
Yeah.
And so, those are two different things.
Yeah. And I think all of us, we all leave the keys somewhere or forget to, do this, that, or the other. And, if you're starting to feel like you may have a form of dementia, that can be really scary. And you start questioning, is this dementia? But there are a lot of things that are part of normal aging. And it doesn't necessarily mean dementia. But yeah, like we said, once that you're leaving that pan on the stove and forgetting to turn it off and things are getting dangerous, you're definitely kind of crossed a line where, that's not just normal forgetfulness, but, it's somewhere where you need a little more expertise and support.
So the first thing to do, I'm being facetious here, but I see this a lot, is to chew mom out for doing that. How could you leave that on there? How could you forget? Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And that doesn't help.
Yeah. We go straight to logic. And sometimes I see people new to dealing with the disease, whether it's a family member, maybe a newer staff member, and, you go to logic just like you would in your normal life. It's default. And when you try to use logic, you're going to fail. You have to be able to think outside of the box. And I guess I have a couple of prop things I brought along that, where we're on Zoom here. I have an image, and this image shows the brain. So this is your brain in the different stages of Alzheimer's. So you'll notice this normal brain here. You see how well it's functioning. It's firing up all the different centers of the brain. And in the early stages, when you get to that kind of self-realization and knowing, okay, something's wrong and I'm doing some weird things, you can see how different that functioning gets. And eventually, as your brain deteriorates, you get into these, the later stages of Alzheimer's, and you can really see a huge difference of how you're functioning versus how you used to function. And it's really a pretty amazing illustration. And then also, I have 3 little boys. This is a child's brain. There's some similarities on, how, a child's brain functions as it's developing. And, for those of you that can relate to, kids at home or grandkids, you don't always have that same judgment or logic. My kids do, if they're jumping off something or, climbing on something or doing something that doesn't quite make sense, but all the parts of your brain aren't functioning.
Yeah.
And it just, each part of your brain really controls how your body works, all different parts of your body. And logic follows a fully functioning brain. But once someone starts doing something that's not logical, then it's hard for us to know, what do we do in this situation?
And hence your statement that, we jump to logic. And oh my gosh, my dad did that all of the time. What were you thinking? Well, you know what? I was a teenage boy. I don't know that I ever thought,
Yeah.
that was a struggle.
Yeah.
And so there's, as the Alzheimer's dementia progresses, then we lose a lot of the ability to think. So thinking is not our best approach. And so if we're not doing logic, if we're not doing the thinking thing, Bryce, what are we doing? We've got to interact with these people. We got to help them to get some food in them and, some activities. There's things that we got to help with. How do we do that?
Yeah. So, like I mentioned before, it's not up to the person with dementia to change and figure out how to do things in their new normal. It's up to us to change. And there's, I guess, different parts of your brain that like I mentioned before, they affect how you act. Like the front part of your brain, a lot of your impulses in that frontal lobe are controlled there. Pretty much every kind of dementia, that part of your brain is going to be one of the first things that's affected. So, understanding, that's something that's affected. Also, your environment can have an effect on you. There's a lot of things that cause you to act in a way that's difficult for the person trying to help you. So, one thing that we teach our staff is how to interact with someone in that situation, how to empathize with them. And then there's some steps of how you can interact with that person. So, something that is easier to remember, if you hold up your hand, we have 5 basic different senses. So your sense of vision, your auditory response, what you hear, touch, and then your sense of smell and your sense of taste. So of these 5 senses, I've ranked them in order of which ones remain the strongest as your Alzheimer's or dementia would progress. So when we're trying to say, okay, we want to have a positive interaction with one of our residents, or if you're a caregiver and want to have a positive interaction, you need to connect with these senses. And there's, I guess, an example in this coach certification I got with Teepa Snow. It's called A Positive Approach to Care. She gives an example, which maybe it's a little PG-13 of an example, but so if you have your different senses you're working with, have you ever seen someone go up to someone that's maybe hard of hearing, has dementia, and walk right up next to their ear and lean in and try to speak loudly and tell them something that, hey, let's go get some breakfast, and really they kind of rush into a situation which could potentially cause, catastrophic result that might startle that person, and their lack of impulse could cause them to, react negatively. So, we want to connect with these senses that are the most strong. And, if you rush into a situation, you skip your visual connection with the person, the auditory response, or connecting with them with your words, and you go straight to touch. For example, is you might get that reaction from the person that's frustrated. So, it's important that we go through these different steps, especially these first three, which is your visual, your auditory, and then moving into touch, where if I just walked up to you right now and started unbuttoning your shirt, you might start thinking, what's going on here? And it's, if you put yourself in the shoes of one of our residents or someone with dementia, that can be pretty startling. Or you might be thinking, hey, I'm going to get lucky. It's they're unbuttoning my belt buckle, but really we're just, we're helping you go take a shower.
Yeah.
So
part of this is what it sounds like is you're establishing some sort of a context for a communication, and you do that by catching their sight, making sure they see you first of all. And then second, you address them, you try to talk to them so that they know you're there.
Yeah.
And then you can begin to provide some care or a conversation. Well, that's not unusual for a lot of folks. That they don't like to be startled. They want to know that you're there and you interact with them.
Yeah, I know people that don't like to sit with their back to the door of a restaurant.
Yep.
And if someone walks up beside you, you get a little startled, and it's something that affects all of us, and it especially affects our residents that have a hard time, processing what's going on around them.
Well, I'm not particularly comfortable with I'm sitting and somebody stands behind me.
Yeah.
And we're trying to have a conversation. I'm now everybody's going to do that to me, but I'm not particularly comfortable with that. I want them to come around so that I can see them.
Yeah.
And I've seen this too, where, they're standing and I'm sitting, or I'm standing and they're sitting, isn't necessarily comfortable. And that's not necessarily somebody that's dealing with dementia. That's a lot of people have that issue.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And imagine you're in a wheelchair and someone comes up behind you and just starts pushing you, and you're like, whoa, what's going on? Where am I going? And it can be really startling. And that's where, one of the most challenging situations is someone that has, aggressive behaviors, as you call it. And a lot of times I think those behaviors are spurred on by the person that's trying to help, the person that's approaching the person with dementia. And that's probably the hardest thing to navigate, is how do I help this person without, triggering their, their impulsivity or their flight or fight response, where they're nervous and scared.
Yeah.
But the number one sense that you retain is your visual.
Got it.
I guess an illustration of that, your peripheral vision, kind of what you see out the side of your eyes. Like if you reach your hands out and kind of wiggle your fingers, you can't really see my fingers wiggling. But as you slowly bring your hands forward, for those of us that are a little bit younger, you're going to see your fingers wiggling after you've moved your hands in just a little bit. With normal aging, if not even with Alzheimer's or dementia, the older you get, the more that gap is going to close in and your peripheral vision goes away. But with Alzheimer's and dementia, it shrinks down a lot more. So it's really important of how someone approaches you. And an example I like to do when training and working with my staff or anyone about how to positively approach someone. Number one, this visual response. Let's imagine you, I guess in your early stages of Alzheimer's or dementia, it's like you're wearing goggles So if you put your hands up like you're wearing goggles and just, try that out and look around, and you'll notice it's really hard to see what's next to you. In the middle stages, if you go like this, like you're wearing binoculars, that's how your vision is affected in the middle stages. And when I'm working with someone, training them, I'll have them walk around a chair that I just put in the middle of a room. And this is someone with all their senses, a fully functioning brain. And, they'll often bump into that chair. They're having to look down at the ground and try to track where they're walking. And, you can only imagine how tough that could be if your other senses were affected. And then in the latest stages of Alzheimer's dementia, if you're trying this out, is put up a monocular, just one eye. And that's how much of kind of a tunnel vision you get. So understanding that, and if you just try that out yourself and try walking around a chair, you can start to empathize and feel how scary that might be. If someone came up to help you and maybe they grabbed both your hands and said, let's go walk this way, and your vision is this, and they're kind of moving you along quickly, and you're like, oh man, am I going to fall? Like, what's around me? Like, a bunch of us trip on whatever laying around the house, just walking normally, and, put yourself in this situation, and, it has a big effect on your life, really.
So the application starts at home,
Yeah.
if we have mom at home, and mom is moving into, she started into a diagnosis that includes dementia, then the first thing I think you said, and I hear it now and I see it, is slow down.
Yeah.
First of all, slow down. Don't be in a hurry.
Yeah. Yep.
And instead of yelling from across the room, maybe get over so they can see you clearly.
Yeah. 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 So kind of that first step is you want to connect with that person visually. So there's 3 basic kind of space concepts. So in public space, when I'm talking with someone and you're anywhere from, 6 feet or further away from me, I might wave, hey, Mark, how's it going? But everyone kind of has a bubble, their own personal space. Whether you're more extroverted or introverted, that bubble might be a little different, the size of it. But for most people, it's about 6 feet. So once I step up to within 6 feet of you, I'm at the edge of your bubble. Anything closer than that, and you start feeling like, okay, this is getting a little close for me, or, you've entered my personal space. And then once you move beyond that, and when we're giving care to our residents or family members, you have to move into this third step of touch, and you need to gain the trust of the person you're helping before you just barge in on that situation. So, first of all, we're getting in the line of vision of a person while we're in that public space. And then we're going to pause at 6 feet. So once we get to the edge of that bubble, I'm going to pause there, and I want to make sure I'm in your line of vision. Once I'm there in that line of vision, if let's say you had your monocular up, you might not be seeing a whole lot of me. If I'm waving at you, it might just look like a floating hand. If you try that out and have someone wave at you. So we want to put our hand next to our face. We all wave to say hello. It's normal in our society, but I want that hand waving to connect to my face. So it's like, okay, you see me, I'm waving at you. Okay, we're interacting. You're at the edge of my bubble. So I'm not going to cross into your personal space or your bubble until you invite me there. And this is where you have to be patient. You can't rush past this step. And a normal thing, I'm gonna call you by your name. I'm gonna stop at that bubble. Hey, Mark, how you doing? And another normal thing we do in our society, we shake hands. So once I pause there, I'm gonna reach out to shake your hand, and I'm just gonna wait, because your brain might be moving a little slower and you need a second to process, okay, someone wants to shake my hand. Once I've reached out there and then you reach back to me, now you've invited me essentially into your space.
Right.
So we went from, okay, you see me visually, I called you by your name, you heard me, that's your second strongest response that you still retain. And then we're moving to touch. And the way we naturally move to touch, we shake hands. And then from there, a lot of times we shake hands, we let go. It's a quick exchange. In this case, if I need to help you shower and we're going to have to undress you, that exchange is going to be a little longer. So there's a technique we use. It's called hand under hand. And it's hard to show, I guess, with my hand, but if I'm coming in to hold your hand, I kind of rotate my hand so that it's kind of grasping around your hand like this. And once I've made that connection, it's kind of a supportive thing. I don't want my hand to be on top of your hand. I want you to be on top. You're in control. This isn't like a power move to say it's a very gentle, supportive thing you do. And from there, I also want to kind of step to the side of you. And, if you can imagine, and it's easy to illustrate this in person, but if someone walks straight up to you, squared up their shoulder to shoulder, and they're 3 to 6 feet away from you, imagine how you would feel versus if someone stood a little bit to the side of you and kind of opened their shoulders. You feel like, okay, there's a little bit of an escape here. Someone's not trying to corner me. And, if someone walks up to you anywhere in public, if they stand directly in front of you and block your path, that it feels weird. Think about it, when it happens to you sometime in the future. But
yeah, and this is not logic. This is not, here's the logic. No, I'm not trying to stop you, da da da. You can't talk this. This is you, as you say, you have to go through this routine, and I'm guessing you have to do it over and over and over again, because they're not going to remember that you did it 2 hours ago.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. You have to do it over and over. And, it's not like a completely natural way that we're used to interacting.
Right.
But if you try this out, and you can try this out on someone that doesn't have Alzheimer's or dementia, it's still a good way to approach anybody. But once you've moved through those steps of, going up to the 6 feet, hey, Mark, how's it going? I'm going to shake your hand. You invited me into your space. Maybe I want to talk about something, how about the weather out there? Or if someone's a big baseball fan, like, did you catch the game last week? Something to, build confidence with that person. And then from there, the last step of what we're doing is we like to do how about statements. So rather than, and someone that's helped someone with Alzheimer's or dementia could probably relate, versus saying, do you want to go take a shower? Do you want to go get something to eat? Do you want to go for a walk? A lot of times it's going to be no. But if you come at it more creatively and say, hey, how about we go do this together? You want to leave it a little more open-ended versus, just getting shut down when, hey, it would be good for them to go for a walk. And it's been a couple of days since they showered, and it's probably good we get a shower. And, we found that using this approach has, one, made the caregiver a lot more confident. Sometimes I've had times in the past where, a staff member said, oh, so-and-so, they hit me and they're being combative. And then, that person can unfairly get labeled as a difficult person.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, though, it's about our approach and how could you have interacted with them to give you the best chance of a positive outcome. And, I kind of flew through those steps, but it's really something that gives you confidence and the ability to have the best outcomes you can when helping to care for someone. and some good
So,
practical steps.
yeah, so what I'm hearing, and this until you get used to it, it's going to be exhausting, I think. But what I'm hearing is you have to be very intentional as you approach someone.
Yeah.
You know, in a typical day, we see lots of people, we don't think, you know, we just have these habits where I'm going to go say hi, you know, and you can stand in front of them because, you know, they're not going anywhere, you're not going anywhere. And so,
Yeah.
you know, this doesn't matter a lot. And so we're not taking up you know, the stage upstairs with all of this information and trying to process it. But that's not how it works here. We've got to develop the routines, and we have to be very intentional, and that's got to be exhausting to do that, you know, on an ongoing basis.
Yeah. Yeah. And once you learn these things, it can become second nature, but it can be overwhelming. And if you're trying to, you know, learn all of this and figure out the best way to help your loved one, you know, at a certain stage, that's why we're here, to be able to help out and be the expert. So, you know, you can learn some of these techniques from us. And, you know, once it's the time for mom or dad or a spouse to come live with us, you know, you can know that, you know, we're using these valuable techniques to care for your loved one, maybe in a way that is beyond your capacity, or maybe, you know, it's going to take you years to get proficient at the best way to help them. And that's where a place like Emerson House can step in. And, you know, we have years and years of expertise in doing this and interacting with people with dementia every day. And, you know, ultimately, once someone's in a setting like this, they can, you know, have socialization and a lot more positive of an experience versus butting heads while you both try to figure out, okay, how do we do this? How does life look now as you've kind of lost that, you know, family member that isn't acting how they used to? And it's
Yeah,
a tough deal.
it's really a tough situation, and it takes lots of energy. It takes being very intentional, and you're going to forget. You just are. And then if you figure it out, then you're going to be hard on yourself because you forgot. And
Yeah.
there's that one time you didn't do it right, or
Yeah.
maybe 3 times that you didn't do it right. And then you're
Yeah.
going to feel guilty because you can't do it right. Um, these are complicated situations, Bryce. None of these are easy.
Yeah. Yeah. They are tough.
Well,
Yeah.
and it's it's not easy to find a community situation for a loved one, but it's not easy to have them at home either.
Yeah.
And so it seems to me this is where I kind of get on my soapbox a little bit as an attorney and go, there's 2 things that we have to be very careful about here. One is clearly our loved one who's struggling. Absolutely have to be aware, have to find the best situation possible. And I know that so many people think that they've got to be that best situation.
Yeah.
But you know, the energy and the effort that it takes, I know a lot of people that, you know, they've ended up in the hospital or they've ended up in a bad situation because they just had to try to be and do everything.
Yeah.
And, and
Yeah.
so if that's going to be near impossible, but you go down as the caregiver, you're the person that makes this work. We can't lose you. We can't have you go down. And so we have to think through
Yeah.
the options. So let's talk options a little bit. One option, and so I try to jump over quickly the option of the spouse or the daughter being that one person, and we keep them at home,
Yeah.
thinking that I can do it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Well, that imposes on your health and well-being. And I know people that have isolated, they become isolated trying to be that one person.
Yeah,
And so they
absolutely.
don't see other people, and there's other things that don't get done. Um, it's an option, but boy, I don't know that it's always the best option.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that, we won't go there. Another option is we can bring somebody into the home. Well,
Hmm.
hang on. Let me finish that thought. We can hire somebody to come in and provide some respite, or
Yep.
we can have them come in and help with some of the activities, maybe some bathing and things like that. Yes, typically not cheap to do.
Yeah, very expensive.
And someone who's dealing with a diagnosis of dementia isn't necessarily excited to have somebody coming into their house.
Yeah, yeah. It's like an intruder is coming in your house. Until you get enough of a rhythm with that person, you may or may not ever fully adjust to that. And it's your space, it's your home, different from being somewhere else, and being in a community like ours and somebody comes in, it's different than your own home. Yeah.
Yeah. So these are options. And I'm not going to sit here and say that those options never work, because
Yeah, those can be
many
great.
times they do.
Yeah, my own grandmother is at home living with my mother right now, and it's working out great for them. And I'm sure a point will come where that dynamic gets more difficult. But yeah, absolutely. There's and we're not here to push anyone just to our direction. We want to be a resource, and what's right for you is right until circumstances change. Absolutely.
Well, and I guess that's the other thing to point out here is, if we're at the front end of an Alzheimer's diagnosis, or a diagnosis involving dementia, that doesn't mean we have to, find a place right now and move somebody out of the house. But
Yeah. Yeah.
that isn't an automatic, oh, we've got a diagnosis, now we have to do all these things. There's
Yeah.
going to be considerable amount of time that you can, that they're going to still be with you. And when I say that, cognitively with you.
Yeah.
But things will be changing over time. And so getting some help is, I think, is important. But it doesn't necessarily mean full time yet.
Yeah.
And
And it
I think
helps to
that's,
have someone like you to help navigate that with someone and help them plan out that path and what it looks like and the ups and downs of everything. And I think we've all know somebody or ourselves have said to your spouse, you better never put me in one of those places,
yeah,
and that's the most unfair thing that you could ever say to your spouse.
it is.
And
It is.
in the earlier stages where you're still planning and you're still you're still have enough capacity, that's a big place where you can come in and help people understand that you that's not fair if I say that to my spouse
Yeah.
or she says that to me.
Yeah.
And
So
understanding why.
yeah. And so again, we were talking a little bit ago that it gets really involved, really complicated. None of these are really easy situations.
Yeah.
So I was going to mention, though, that in our spectrum of care, the things that we can have happen, I know in the past, this is unfair, I'm springing this on you. I know in the past that you've had a kind of a day program where people can come. Do you still have that going? Or
So
did the
just because
COVID?
of COVID, we've gone away from that, but we will start that again once we can.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's been a great tool for several people that have eventually come here, and they've been able to, get some reprieve for the
yes,
caregiver. Do you want to go see a movie? Do you want to go to lunch with your friends? Do you want to, go get some shopping done? We've had people bring their loved one here and, kind of give themselves what we would call a golden day, where they get a break from being the caregiver.
Yeah.
And then also it helps the resident just kind of work into our activities and what we have going on. And, often we see people come into our situation and they'll say, oh, dad's never going to participate in your activities. He's never coming out of his room. He just sits and watches TV all day. And, I kind of just sit back and just say, okay, like, that I'll accept that information. And often I'm going to surprise you in the future when, oh, dad's social, he's in there playing volleyball and, he's the life of the party. And all of a sudden this person that went from, depressed, anxious, all of a sudden he has a social circle and is being loved. And there's, a circle of people around him, our residents, our staff, and family. You don't give up. We're not taking away that from you. I know it's been weird with COVID where it's been more difficult to come and visit, but now that's kind of changing, getting closer back to normal. But you don't have to lose that. You can still be here and be a part of that person's life, and you're not giving up your control.
So part of what we're talking about here is, yes, you're going to have to be intentional. There are support groups that you can be a part of, and the folks that are there with you have a common experience.
Yeah.
We're not all the same, but they have, they've had a common experience. And so that can be a wonderful place to get some support, get some help, talk through some things. But it's going to be a journey. It's not dad has a diagnosis and we drop him off at the doorstep of Emerson.
Yeah.
And then you're done. I've washed my hands, Bryce is taking care of him and I don't have to do anything anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not how it works.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's harder for the families to work through their process. Alzheimer's can be and is a terminal disease. It eventually it would lead to hospice.
Yes.
And, having been involved with those situations a lot, there's a kind of a death process that you're walked through. Not a fun topic to talk about, but we, as caregivers, family members, you go through that process twice, really, when someone has Alzheimer's or dementia. The first time, you have to go through the denial and, all the different steps of the process of, like, I lost dad, I lost my spouse. Who are they? They don't recognize me. And, it's a difficult situation where,
you're grieving, you're going through the grieving process twice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so again, this is not easy. These are difficult conversations to have. Some recommendations from my side is don't do it by yourself.
Yeah.
Get some help. Enlist, if it's a spouse, enlist the kids or friends or clergy. Enlist some people that can be on your side. Look at getting some help in the home. And maybe it's not help with the caregiving, but maybe it could be somebody coming in and doing some light cleaning for you.
Yeah.
Or picking up some groceries or doing some things that allow you then to focus on the caregiving. I would recommend strongly that you don't adopt that as your full-time 24/7 situation, that you are a caregiver 24/7.
Yeah.
It'll take you down is what it will. It's overwhelming. You can't do that. So again, get some help. Look at maybe bringing some help in. I know some resources where you could get some help with respite care, maybe a couple times a week. You can get somebody in. I like your day program. I heard some wonderful things, and hopefully we'll get back to that.
Yeah. And you mentioned respite. We've even recently had someone come spend 30 days with us, and the family, they wanted to go visit, their adult children that are, in college, or, their family, and go see the grandkids. And, it was too difficult to go fly and do that
Yeah.
with their spouse or with grandma that's living with you. So, that's an option too, is come spend some time here, and it's a little bit of a step that buys you some freedom without fully, jumping straight into a
Well,
full-time situation.
yes. And if we've decided, if we determined that we need to have a community setting like Emerson House, that doesn't mean we're done. It doesn't, it doesn't end our relationship as a spouse, as a child, that isn't done.
Yeah, absolutely.
We
Yeah.
just got some help. And
Yeah.
so we still need to follow through. And it will be easier when the COVID thing is behind us. We've all got our vaccines and stuff. I get it, but we're not done. We
Yeah.
still need to be, we still need to have that relationship. And so
Yeah.
we don't drop them off at your doorstep and say, here, Bryce, just take care of them. And
Yeah.
I suppose it happens, Bryce.
Yeah.
I suppose you see some.
Yeah, it does, unfortunately, sometimes.
But that's, that doesn't need to be an individual. That doesn't need to be me saying, well, I'm done,
Yeah.
One, again, that's harder on us than it is to learn how to interact and communicate, and provide care. It'll get us in the end, I can tell you that. And so we can still be very much involved. And I think what we learned today too, if I can kind of summarize, is as we do this, if we can learn how to be intentional with our interaction, that would make it a better situation for our loved one, and then of course for ourselves as well.
Yeah.
Even though it seems a little bit like a dance, Bryce, that they got to they got to see us and hear our voice, and then we can touch and have the dance. It seems like a dance, but we're just being intentional and providing the best that we can for them.
Yeah. And once, the first time you do that and it works successfully for you, it's like magic. It's all of a sudden, it's kind of a wave of relief comes over you, and you say, okay, I can do this. Yeah. I can connect. So yeah, it's a great way to intentionally help those around us.
Very good. The truth of the matter is, we all like to be helped at the level that we're at, not the level you if you're up at this level, I need help down at this level.
Yeah.
And everybody's that way. It's not just somebody who's dealing with dementia. It's everybody wants to be helped at the level that they find themselves. And you can't move that level.
Yeah, the dignity is huge. I guess sometimes our logic, I see people, start treating someone like they're a child, or, talking in a high pitched voice, or, saying, honey, sweetie, to someone that doesn't want to be, they don't want to be called that. They don't want to be talked to like that. And yeah, it's just thinking outside of logic. And we relate it to, I showed you a picture earlier of what a child's brain is like when it's developing. And a lot of times our logic says, okay, I remember this when I raised kids, and I'm going to revert back to that piece of logic I have. And it's not. So yeah, good tools help you to be confident and help your loved one.
And help you to develop that confidence, and then step into a leadership role. And I don't mean bossing somebody around. That's not what I mean when I say leadership. It's, here's what you got to remember. Here's what you've got to understand. And when you're talking to your own kids and they're dealing with grandma or grandpa, let me help you to do this and remember this, and, and make it a higher quality experience. My father-in-law struggled with mom having, dealing with dementia.
Yeah.
And he just assumed that certain things were going to be like this and going to be like this, and that he could get mom there.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
and it, like you said, it was all this logic. Here's how she is, and I can get her there. And he struggled as much as my mother-in-law did, because
Yeah.
he was not open to that and open to them having a different kind of a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. You lost control and you don't know what to do. You kind of panic.
Yeah. Well, we learned enough today to maybe not completely lose control. Well, I to at least better understand the situation that they're finding themselves in. And like you said, we kind of got to enter their world. We're not going to pull them into ours. It isn't going to
Yep.
happen that way.
Yeah.
We have to go in and live in their world and see what they see, and hear what they hear. We can't just bring them into ours anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Takes creativity from your fully functioning brain to help make up the difference for them.
Yeah. Very good. Well, Bryce, again, this is Bryce Saxton. He's over at Emerson House. And Bryce, how do we get hold of you if we need some information? We want, or maybe we need to talk about whether or not it's time to step
Yeah.
into a full-time situation. How do we get hold of you?
So we have a website, emersonhouseboise.com. You can go there and get information about our community. If you want a phone number, you can reach out to 208-377-3177. And we would be glad to talk through whatever your situation is. If you're not ready now, but you just need some advice, we'd love to help you. We like to be a community resource, and we can talk through some different options and different scenarios and push them your way too, Mark, that they can find the full picture of help that they need.
Yeah, no matter what you do, it's not going to be cheap or easy. You need to get some tools put in place, and you got to look at your resources, and you have to, this is a horrible thing because people don't like the word, you have to do some planning.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's tough to do.
Yeah.
Well, Bryce, thank you.
Thanks,
for
Mark.
the information and the training today. And appreciate you there being available all the time.
Yeah.
And join us again.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Take care.